we got today? We're starting like, well, most people, because I heard the comment the other day, it's like, Ward, why are we still in chapter 1? We technically weren't. Volume, area, that was part of chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about calculations, right? Algebra 1 stuff. Kind of, can we calculate this number? Can we find area? Can we find volume? Can you solve for x? That's what all chapter 2 is about. Now, we're going to take a little bit step back, right? We're still doing all the calculations, but I want to talk about something that probably no math class ever really discusses with you. The idea of like your reasoning skills, your mental ability to like calculate and problem solve, right? We're doing a lot of like weird psychology today, so I think you'll kind of like, it's kind of a weird step back. So the idea is that what I want to talk about today, there's two topics. Number one, I want to talk about deductive reasoning, like what that term means, what it applies to you, and inductive reasoning. Maybe you've heard these terms before, maybe you haven't. I think they're kind of cool. They're really fascinating when you start to look at them. And so the idea is about, I still want to be on that topic, like can we problem solve? Can we solve for x? Can you find volume? Can you find area, right? We're still in that. But how do you mentally do it, right? That idea, right? So let's start with deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is this idea that you have this ability in your head to memorize things. Like, think about that. You had to memorize something in your life to get to this point. But deductive reasoning is only that. So the way I always explain deductive reasoning to people, and this is maybe the best way to put it, is like, if you can think of a classmate of yours that you consider to be book smart, they're really book smart. They can memorize things. They're really, like, they have good grades in class because you're like, oh, they just memorize things. They're really good at that. Think about that just for a second. You don't need to say any names, but you can think of that one person that probably can do that, right? Well, deductive reasoning is that. It's memorization, right? Can you memorize things? So can you memorize facts, rules, definitions? Can you do formulas? Can you do theorems? Can you do postulates? That's deductive reasoning, right? Now, here's a weird thing. Let me explain it in terms of maybe it makes more sense to you. Somebody that is strictly and only deductive, that only has that type of reasoning in their head, will be able to memorize a problem I put on the board. Like, so I'll put a problem up here and they'll write it in their notes and they have it memorized. But they won't be able to adapt it to a new problem, if that makes any sense. So you can probably think of that kid that you've had in another class that when they get to the homework, their hand goes up. How do you do number 1? Hand goes up. How do you do number 2? How do you do number 3? How do you do number 4? Because they don't even like want to take a 10-second break. Like, can they make the connection to what they memorize to like the new stuff? Because all they can do is see a problem, they can just do that problem, but nothing else. Okay? Can you think of somebody that probably does that in at least a class or two? Maybe you're in your elementary, right? Now, think about this. Everyone in this room has deductive. You had to. You memorized your name, you memorized the path to get to my room, you memorized where my room is. You made it here, except for 2, I'm kind of worried about that. Now, here's the thing. There's people in this world, that's all they have. They only have deductive reasoning. They can't adapt to any new situation. They're called savants. A savant is a person, it's a very rare population of this planet, that has such a high human ability for deductive reasoning that it skews everything else in their brain, and all they can do is memorize things. They can't adapt to new situations. They can recall knowledge they've previously seen. Kim Peek is one of the world's most fascinating minds because he is, without a doubt, the fastest person to recall knowledge on this planet. Now, he has passed away, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. But Kim Peek had a superhuman ability, that's why he's called a savant, suffers from savantism, where he had the ability to memorize anything he's ever read or seen, to a point where it was superhuman. Okay? He would go on Dave Letterman, Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, and they would test him, like they would have interactions with him where they would give him a book before the show would start, like an hour before the show, and Kim would memorize the entire book in an hour before the show. Every word, line for line. And then they would come on and go, okay, Kim, we need page 93, the third word and the third paragraph. And he'd start reading it out loud without seeing it. The entire thing, go through page, word for word. Now, he couldn't use it. All he could do was recall. And when you watch him, like, how does he read an entire book in an hour? When you watch Kim read, he would flip a page, scan the page, flip. He already memorized the page. He has perfect photographic memory. Perfect photographic memory. Where he doesn't know how to apply it, he just can recall what he's seen. So one of his other party tricks he would do is Kim would, because he does a lot of lecture halls because he's got an ability, right? So they thought this is a great way to show this rare talent that he's got. He would go to local colleges and stuff, and one of his things was he would ask you your birthday. And so you'd say, like, mine is December 3rd, and you tell him the year, and you go, okay, that was on a Friday. It was sunny that day, it was like 63 degrees, the Yankees beat the Red Sox 2-3, and he'd read off the entire newspaper he read that day. Because he memorized the newspaper, right? It was a rare human ability. Now, here's the problem. He was at such a high level of deductive reasoning, he couldn't apply it. So you're going to see a video, that's a clickable link, I'm going to click on it here in a minute. When you see Kim for the first time, it will appear that he's almost mentally challenged because he doesn't have that ability to communicate very well. He can recall knowledge, but he can't apply it. So it'll never work for like NASA or anything like that because he can't apply knowledge. He can recall maybe a formula he's read, but he'll never be able to use it. Like what you guys did when you guys did your page 70, right? I gave you a bunch of formulas on the board, and you had to go do problems I've never shown you before. That took deductive and the other type, inductive. You had to apply it. You could adapt to a new problem. Okay, I can plug the numbers in here and figure it out. Kim can't do that. He could just recall what he's read. He had an entire library of books in his house that he could just recall every word, everything. Just if you told him the book and a page, he could just go from there. It was a superhuman ability. They based a Hollywood film on his life. It was called Rain Man. Came out in the 80s. That movie, it was with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. That movie was based on Kim Peek's life. That was like his life. So let's take a look.
We count likes, calories, minutes, follows. Every day we stare at screens and count. But we don't count what really counts. Our moments together. We'll never know how many chances we'll get to gather by the ocean or embark on an adventure. That's why Burger believes in the immeasurable value of vacations and giving people these spaces to share moments and the time to just be together.
It's down in the corner. I can't skip it. I can't see the cursor. Where is it? Oh, it's over there somewhere.
Grammarly
does
more than catch errors.
This is a disaster. I can't see my cursor. It's not showing up.
Perfect words that make you
There it is.
sharp.
Yes. All right, here we go.
Dustin Hoffman, when Hoffman was researching the role.
When was the World Variety executed?
October 29th, 1618.
And what day of the week is that?
It was a Thursday.
October 9th, 1995.
It was a Saturday and this year was a Friday.
When's your next Thanksgiving?
I have so many things in me that you can't even guess them all. You know that?
Kim Peek has one of the weirdest brains in the world.
He's become a living Google.
What Kim represents is the dark side of the moon. He is in love with knowledge for the sake of it.
One T.
He's a confounding mixture of disability and brilliance that neuroscientists are determined to understand.
It's a very exciting opportunity for us to find out what makes the human brain unique.
All right, so kind of watching, this is a Discovery Channel. Discovery Channel does a bunch of different shows every year where, like they have Shark Week and stuff. Well, 1 week of the year they always do superhuman abilities, right? It could be an athlete, it could be somebody with intelligences. And they feature Kim Peek, they call it the real Rain Man. And it was over a couple days on Discovery Channel. I just happened to stumble upon it one day because I've never heard of Kim Peek before. I've watched the movie Rain Man when I was a kid. I never knew what it was about. So, but here's the idea. Kim has perfect memorization. You recall knowledge. You saw him speaking there at different colleges and stuff. He goes on talk shows a lot, or used to anyway. But he also had this ability, and they showed it in the movie Rain Man, where Kim could instantly count objects, like instantly count. So how they figured this out, because they didn't know. They classified him as, I hate using that term, but mentally retarded. Now they use it mentally challenged. But his family didn't know any better. He was in a home where he was being assisted cared for, and when they were kind of talking to him, his brother accidentally dropped a box of toothpicks on the floor, and Kim showed for the first time his ability to count. He told them there were 264 on the floor. Like, instantly knew the number. Like, it was like instant. And so they test him here at different colleges where they'd hook him up to a machine and they'd put a bunch of different images on the computer screen, and he would instantly say how many there were. They'd say, how many X's? There's 20. How many squares are there? There's 407. Like, he just instantly can count. He's not like counting one by one because they watch his eye. He just knows it. It's this weird human ability, right? But as you can tell, he can't apply it. You can ask him questions, but he's not going to hold an entire conversation with you. It's just a perfect recall. There's a lot of people on this planet that have this rare ability, savantism, where they have like human, like superhuman ability, right? And Kim is one of them. Now, let's go to the other one here. So that was Kim Peek, right? Now the other type of reasoning is called inductive. Inductive is the complete opposite of deductive. It's not memorization. People who have inductive skills are quote-unquote street smart. They can adapt super quickly to different situations, and they can hold conversations. They can improv really well. Actors and comedians and stand-up comedians are really good at inductive reasoning. They can read a crowd and adjust to it really fast. That's a skill that some people don't have. Some people do not like public speaking. Inductive have no problem with that. They can adjust on the fly. Right? They can see patterns through observations, using common sense, which you can't teach, and instantly adjust and solve a problem. Like, instantly solve a problem. And so there's superhuman ability that can do that as well. Another savant is Daniel Tammet. Daniel Tammet is now considered the smartest man on the planet. Behind Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking passed, I believe, a year or two ago. Daniel Tammet has now taken his reins as the smartest man on the planet. Why Daniel is so unique. Daniel Tammet is a few years older than me. I think he's 3 years older than me. He's a professor at Oxford College in England. He's from England. You'll see a video on him here in a minute. He's traditional British. He has a British accent. He has terrible teeth. They can go the stereotypical thing. But Daniel displayed to the world his ability for savantism and extreme memorization. Like, because they thought he was just another savant. Where Daniel Tammet went into the local University of Oxford and had a Guinness Book of World Records there and recited 34,000 places of pi in order. 34,000. This is the first 25 numbers. It 34,000. It took him 8 hours to do it in front of a lecture hall. And I had people checking with papers to see what his numbers were. That was just to prove the fact that he is a savant. It is extreme memorization. Right? He could have went further. I think he knows up to like 10 million places now or something like that. So, Daniel Tammet's weird though. His situation is completely unique from Kim Peek. Now you're thinking, okay, that's just memorization. What makes him inductive? What makes him special? Daniel can fully communicate what he's experiencing. In fact, you would not consider him to be any different than another college kid or high school kid. Because with savantism, like deductive skills, there's some social ability that's lacked, right? Where you can't communicate. But Daniel can. He can actually communicate what he's seeing, what he's experiencing. But he also has this rare ability, he displayed this as well, that he has perfect inductive reasoning. He can adapt on the fly and solve new problems that have never been thought of with his ability to memorize things. So to prove the point, what Daniel did is, what the Discovery Channel did is they challenged him to prove that he's also inductive reasoning savant, where they said, okay, you can memorize things, you've proven that, but if you are a true inductive savant, we want to challenge you to learn a new language in a week. Okay, 1 week to learn a new language. That takes this, you have to observe, do patterns, be able to adapt to conversations, and we're going to put you on live TV on an interview in that country. So you're going to fly to that country and you're going to have an interview and you're going to be on camera doing that. So they didn't tell him what language he was going to learn. So a week before that he was going on a trip. He doesn't know where yet. They're going to provide him the ticket. They dropped off his textbook. He has to learn from. They gave him the Icelandic language, which is one of the hardest types of languages to learn other than Japanese. It's got a lot of different dialects, lots of letters and their names and stuff. And he learned it over a week, just looking at a book. And he went on the interviews, spoke with them. The interviewers from that country, it was just a local television host, was interviewing him. And when he was done, they didn't know that he learned it a week ahead of time. They didn't know that. They were not told that. They just interviewed him and he answered the questions and he had conversations with them. And when it was done, they said he spoke it better than the people that have been living there their whole life. He has this ability. He learned, I think he knows up to like 9 different languages, and he can learn them in less than a week. I think the fastest he did it was 3 days. He learned a whole entire language in 3 days. How to write it, read it, speak it, that type of thing. He has a superhuman ability. Now, he's also super gifted at mathematics. And you're going to see it with the clip I'm going to show you. He can do extreme calculations in his head with no calculator in
See
front
the
of him.
guy known as the dude for calculating?
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I
they
think I've
consider.
seen.
So, the idea is that he can do problems like this in his head and then read off the answer without a calculator in like mere seconds. So this is 27 to the 4th is 27 times 27 times 27 times 27. And he'll just rattle off the answer. And how they know he's not like memorizing it or he's not like calculating it and he's saying it, because when he reads off his answer, he goes front to back. Because when you multiply numbers, right? If you do by column method, you have to do the back number first and carry. And so you would start with the back number. But he reads it from front to back. So it means he just instantly knows it, which is a really weird thing. And he explains what he's experiencing. He suffered a trauma when he was a kid. He had a severe brain impact when he was a kid. He blacked out, he came to, and now he can just do calculations and memorization. He's just doing cases of it. So he's that weird, host that can actually explain what he's experiencing, because he didn't have it when he was first born. He developed it over time, which is a weird thing to think about. But he's currently a professor, considered the smartest man on the planet, because you'll see it. Now the interview you're going to see here, it was the Discovery Channel showing up at his door. And they had a secret button camera, so he didn't know he was being recorded. So that's why the camera's really close to the calculator that the host is asking questions to see if it's legit. Because they want to catch him without a camera in his face to see if he's actually legitimate or if he's just acting. And so here's the video.
Sparks firing off, and it's not until the very last moment that those sparks tell me what on earth they mean.
I've never encountered anyone like this. Yes.
This man is a gold, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
This could be the linchpin that spawns off a new field of research.
Why are they all so excited?
Genius. It's not in the public.
Daniel Tammet claims that since he was 4 years old, he's been able to do huge calculations in his head. So in August 2002, we dropped by, armed with a calculator.
You can't see this calculator that I've got here, can you?
We first asked Daniel to multiply 37 by itself, 4 times.
7.
Okay, 37 to the power of 4. One million.
Yeah.
800 and 74,161. Amazing.
To make sure that we can say, well, perhaps you just know a few of these off by heart, let me just choose another one.
Next, we asked him to divide 13 by 97.
was trying to divide 13. I can't even keep up. Like, he read off the first 5 numbers, and I couldn't even figure out the first one.
You're carrying on.
Carrying on. Do you want me to stop or
How many points can you do it to?
100? Nearly 100. At this point, we borrowed a computer.
So they're
It
using
gave us
Windows,
the
obviously,
answer
as you
to
can tell.
32 decimal places.
Except they're used to use like on Windows.
1, 3, 4, 0, 2, 0, 6, 1, 8, 5, 6, 7.
As he went on, every single number was correct. And he even surpassed the computer.
So it's this really like crazy human ability, right? You're seeing it like he's adapting, he's having conversations. He has this streaming ability. You can see he's doing something with his hand. He's explaining, like, if you were to watch this further, he explains like what he's doing with his hand. What David, and you saw it with like the title, the intro. You know how you saw those like sparks and shapes flying everywhere. That was a part of like this interview. Is like Daniel tries to explain what he sees since his brain injury when he was 4, I guess. He sees like numbers flash in front of his face, like that he sees it as blobs and textures and like different shapes. And what he has to do is he has to interpret what that shape is as a number. So he's kind of figured out that when he's asked to do something, it's just like things start firing off in his brain and it's kind of impacting his vision. And he's trying to interpret what those shapes are because he knows the answer, but he has to like figure out what that number is according to the shape he's like flashing in front of his face. And that's why he can go so fast. He's literally seeing like blocks of them at a time, and he's saying what those numbers are because he's figured out what that number and shape looks like. And so like he's interpreting it, it's constantly flashing, and he's trying to keep up with it. It's the craziest thing in the world, because it's the first time in history somebody's actually been able to explain deductive reasoning, like savantism, to somebody like what they're experiencing. Because usually they can't communicate correctly. And so it's this crazy thing. So he's a part of a massive study, like can a human brain, like where he was impacted, does that affect intelligence? Can everyone have that ability? And it's the first time, so he's a rarity, right, that can ever happen to somebody. But the reason I bring this up is it's like one of those things like, you don't get to see that. That isn't normal, right? That ability is like, I think savantism affects like 1% of the planet. But it's so unique. Now why I bring this up, and I think, why are we even talking about this? This is a weird topic. Because everyone has both abilities. Like when you're asked to problem solve something, either in science class or math class or whatever class you have to go through both methods. Because if you think about science class, let me click on science here. When you go to a science class, there's a scientific method for how you solve things, right? That first step that you do is you identify the problem, then you hypothesize, like what you're going to do for it. Then you come up with these like deductive reasonings, like the procedures you're going to do. You try to like plan it, and then you start collecting data, and then you come up with a conclusion, right? Those are like the 5 steps. I think they teach you those in science class, correct? Like every science class always goes through those 5 steps, usually, right? Well, when the brain gets done, usually what the brain does is it goes back to the beginning and identifies, did that even answer the question? Some people do, like they just say, they go back and like, okay, does that make sense? You start second guessing yourself, and you go through the process again, and you start collecting. Like usually your first instinct is the correct one on most tests. Like when you get your first answer, it's probably the right answer. You shouldn't change it, unless you know you did something massively wrong. But it's one of those things like, it's a method. You have to do deductive, you can see it in there, right? You had to like figure out what were things that I've learned in the past that I've done, previous knowledge. You had to recall something, that's memorization. But hypothesizing what you should do, that's inductive. You had to think of ahead of time, like, because you haven't done the problem yet, you have to think, okay, what do I need to do here? Do I need to add these 2 numbers? Like you're starting to like piece things together, that's inductive skills. Right? You can think of that person that has street smart, that they have a ton of common sense, and then you can also think of the person that doesn't have any common sense. And you know, they have them, both, those 2 same people have both inductive and deductive. They have this, because you can solve. Like all of you have proven the fact that by just being in this room, you have both of these. You can problem solve this way, right? But in math class, they never teach you this. There is a 5-step plan in math we use to solve every type of math problem. No math teacher ever teaches you this. It's just something like, it's a way of like, it's a way of going through math problems in such a way that just everyone does it by instinct of problem solving and in just a logical order, right? So like first step, you have to read for understanding. So if you think back to this, what was the thing we did the first day of class? Not the first day when I did the PowerPoint, like the rules. What was the actual first day of geometry like? What did we do? Talk about the whiteboard thing, right? We were trying to look at a problem and read it for its understanding. I gave you a problem on the board. You had to read it for understanding. You had to like figure out what it was, and I didn't tell you what to do. You just had to go do it. Because I didn't want to influence your answer. I want to see how many people could adapt to a new problem you've never done before, and can you come up with a solution? Because you have to have deductive. You had to like think about what these words mean. You could read something and understand the definitions of those words and put them together. But you had to apply it to something brand new that's inductive. I was testing both. So once you read for understanding, could you plan a solution? A lot of you were like grouping up together and trying to talk about a situation. Come up with some weird answers for it. Okay? Could you use the facts that were given? You know, did you need anything? Determine what you had to do, and then come up with an answer. Do your computational stuff. That's a 5-step plan. I've been doing it since day one. You just never see it in the background. It's just something humans do instinctively when you problem solve something, right? But why bring this up? Because it is a weird topic, right? You agree, this is weird. We were just talking about volume, and suddenly I dropped you in a psychology class. The idea is that what we're going into, we'll need both. You're going to have to be able to solve for X or do some type of algebra where I don't want you to be the kid in class that writes down my notes, you know, whatever problem we're working on, and that's the only thing you can do, is that one problem. You have to be able to, you have to see the rules and adapt them to a new problem that I've never shown you before. All right, because you can always think of that kid that just raises their hand, you know, how do you do question 1, how do you do question 2, question 3, question 4, like I don't understand it. Because they don't even want to apply their inductive reasoning. Can you apply and adapt to a new problem? Can you see the rules? Because there's two types of like logic here, right? You can see rules and then you can adapt rules. There's two parties and you have to do both on the fly. I don't mind questions, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying like, if you don't challenge your brain, you'll never actually get smarter. That's the weird thing if you ever think about this. There's a study that says the human brain peaks at its intelligence at age 1 and 2. Your age 1 and 2 is when you peak at synapses, like transmitters connecting your brain. That's when your peak intelligence is. That's when you can learn new languages. You can learn how to problem solve the fastest when you're 1 and 2. You watch a 1 and 2-year-old going from like 0 to 3 years old, they learn a lot. They can talk, they can walk, they can maybe write something, they can draw pictures, but they did a lot in about a 1 to 2 year span. Think about this. Ask a high school kid, learn Russian over 2 years. Could you learn an entire new language over 2 years and be able to just live there? Yeah, you peaked at age 1 and 2. But here's the weird thing. A part of that study also says in junior high, about 7th, 8th grade, that freshman year, in that time frame, your brain starts to prune. It starts to prune the synapses in your brain, and it starts to adapt your brain so that it best suits what you need it for. That means like, if you don't need a certain synapses, it'll get rid of it to make room for the other ones you're using more. So that means, what that's telling me is that you're still learning. But now, if you stop like applying yourself in junior high and like lower high school, your brain will actually start to decompose because you're learning you're learning to prune the synapses you're not using. So that kid that always just like gives up, like I don't know how to do it, I'm just gonna give up, I'll figure it out later. You're teaching your brain to learn that way that you don't know how to do it anymore. But the kid that actually like thrives on a challenge, like I'll try it. I don't mind if I get it right or wrong, but I'm gonna try to learn how to do it. Even if they just learn one aspect of it, they don't learn how to do the entire problem, you're actually teaching your brain to like expand and connect more synapses, so you're actually getting smarter. You can actually peak your brain at age 25, not age 2, if you continue to challenge it. Think about this, like the game company Nintendo, right? You guys know Nintendo, the Game Boy, the Switch, all that stuff. They made a bunch of games back a couple years ago for like the Game Boy, the 3DS thing. It was called Brain Age. You ever saw those games? It was like puzzles and challenges. They released that because they knew this. They knew that if you continue to challenge your brain and try puzzles and try to like challenge yourself to like constantly never give up and like persevere, you'll actually get smarter. And it's the weirdest thing in the world when you start thinking that way, that you can do any type of math or any type of like problem solving as long as you don't give up. Eventually you'll make a connection to something that you know how to do, right? Even if you don't solve the entire problem. So think of it this way. I can spell tactile, right? All right. Think about this. Okay, I got 3 words on the board. Don't raise your hand, don't say anything. Just think about these. What's the way that you learn the best? So don't say it out loud. Just look at those 3. Which way do you learn the best? Do you learn by visually watching somebody else do it? Do you learn best by hearing it auditory? Or do you learn best by like physically touching it and doing it yourself? Just think of the one. Just pick one. That's the one that you know that you can pick. Because everyone in this room will have a different one. Like you kind of like, you'll select one, like, oh yeah, I'm good at that, right? But here's the weird thing, you needed all 3 to get to this point. If you didn't have all 3, you'd never be able to be in geometry. Because at some point you had to watch somebody else do something. You had to hear me lecture at you all the time. I talk a lot, I know I do. And you had to physically like do it yourself. If you just pick one, like I can only do it by if I just touch it and do it myself and I just practice problems over and over and over and over and over, you're that tactile person, like that's what you have to do. If you just think that's the only way you can learn, you pigeonhole yourself into learning. Your brain is now rewired itself that you can't learn with the other 2. So you gotta like get that in your mind. You have to use all 3. With auditory, think about this. Like there's that company audible.com. It's owned by Amazon. It's audiobooks, right? Some people really like that. They love audiobooks. They can listen to it in a car or a bus ride, and they can go through an entire book and they just soak it in. They're there, they can see it in their head, they're hearing it. But some people absolutely hate that. They want to have the physical book in their hand. They want to self-pace themselves reading that textbook because they can't hear it and just like get the imagery. They have to like read it. It's not that you're not good at this. It's just that you have a different preferred method. But you needed all 3. It's not bad to hear it because then you can hear the explanation of how to pronounce a word every now and then. Now, I try my best to give you all 3. I talk a lot, I know I do. I give you a lot of visual aids when I can. And there's a lot of days I try to have you physically try some stuff out. Or we try different activities. But you need all 3. I thought it was kind of a crazy concept because some of the stuff we're going to do in this section, this first section, the homework we're going to do, like the types of challenges I'm going to throw you, they're really weird. Because I'm going to test your ability, can you problem solve on a problem you've never seen before? Never. And not math problem, something weird and unique, a brain, like almost like a brain teaser. Can you do one? That's what we're going to test you on. Because I'm betting on you probably can. All right. Get the idea of what we're doing? All right, we're done for the day. That's all I had. That was kind of cool. Kind of a fun topic.